In the year 1071, on the plains of eastern Turkey, two great powers faced each other. On one side was the Byzantine Empire, the last heir of Rome, strong but weakening inside. On the other side were the Seljuk Turks, new warriors from Central Asia, fast horsemen and expert archers, rising as a new force in the Muslim world. On August 26, Emperor Romanos IV Diogenes led one of the biggest Byzantine armies of his time against Sultan Alp Arslan and his Seljuk cavalry. At first, it seemed like another battle. But by sunset, everything had changed. The Byzantine army was broken, thousands were lost, and the emperor himself was captured alive, something that had not happened to a Roman ruler in centuries. This defeat was more than just one lost battle. It shook the empire's control over Anatolia and Armenia. It opened the door for Turkish tribes, who had been moving west, to settle and claim this land as their own. Slowly, the heart of the empire, its farms, its soldiers, its resources, began to slip away. For the Byzantines, Manzikert was a wound that never healed. But for the Turks, it was the gateway into Anatolia, remembered as Malazgirt, the victory that started a new era. In this video, we'll discover how the mighty Byzantine Empire suffered defeat at the hands of the Seljuk Turks in the Battle of Manzikert. This clash was more than just a fight, it was the turning point that marked the decline of Byzantium and the rise of the Turks. Together, we'll see how the battle was fought, why the Byzantines lost, and how the Turks gained their first real foothold in Anatolia. For centuries, the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman state, had survived through clever diplomacy, endless gold, and its once disciplined armies. But by the mid-11th century, this strength was crumbling. Political intrigues inside the royal court created instability, and emperors like Constantine IX and Constantine X made disastrous choices, such as disbanding veteran soldiers to save money. One historian even wrote that dismissing the famous Iberian army of 50,000 men was nothing less than a catastrophe for the empire's defenses. Meanwhile, far to the east, a new force was rising, the Seljuk Turks. They were tough nomadic horsemen from the Central Asian steppes, recently united under Islam. Within a few decades, they built a powerful empire stretching from Persia to Syria, and their raids shook the borders of Byzantium. Their young and ambitious sultan, Alp Arslan, whose name meant heroic lion, was determined not only to defend his frontiers but also to expand Seljuk power into the rich lands of Anatolia. Anatolia was more than just a frontier for Byzantium, it was the empire's heart. Its fertile farmlands fed the people, its taxes filled the treasury, and its strong men supplied the army. Whoever held Anatolia would control the empire's future. Both the Romans and the Seljuks knew this well. But Byzantium was already in decline. Under emperors like Constantine IX Monomachos and Constantine X Doukas, corruption and poor leadership drained its power. The most disastrous decision came in 1053, when Constantine IX disbanded the mighty Iberian army of nearly 50,000 soldiers. Overnight, the empire's eastern frontier was left dangerously exposed. The Seljuks wasted no time. In 1064, Sultan Alp Arslan led a grand campaign into Armenia. His target was Ani, the city of 1,000 churches, a rich and fortified stronghold of the Byzantines. Alp Arslan's siege engines and relentless assaults broke Ani's defenses in just 25 days. The city fell, shocking the Christian world and proving that the Seljuks were no longer raiders, but empire builders. This victory gave them a permanent foothold in the region and sent fear racing through Constantinople's walls. In 1068, a new emperor came to power, Romanos IV Diogenes. Unlike the emperors before him who preferred the palace, Romanos was a real soldier. He believed that the only way to save Byzantium was to rebuild its army and face the Turks head-on. He started reforms. Old weak commanders were removed, and strong generals were appointed. One of them was Manuel Komnenos, who managed to win some victories against Turkish raiders. These small successes gave hope that maybe, just maybe, Byzantium could recover. But the reality was very difficult. The empire was already weak. Years of corruption and poor leadership had drained the treasury. The army, once the pride of Rome, was much smaller than before. Many of the new soldiers were inexperienced, and the eastern frontier was still wide open for raids. On the other side, Sultan Alp Arslan was growing stronger. He was young, ambitious, and clever. For him, the real enemy was not Byzantium but the Fatimid Caliphate in Egypt, who controlled Syria and Jerusalem. Alp Arslan wanted to expand his empire and bring glory to the Seljuks by defeating them. So in 1069, he made a smart move. He signed a temporary peace treaty with Byzantium. This gave him security on his northern border, so he could freely focus on the south. For a while, there was calm between the Seljuks and the Byzantines. But this peace was only a pause, a short break before a much bigger storm. In the beginning of 1071, Emperor Romanos IV Diogenes made another attempt for peace. He sent messengers to Sultan Alp Arslan, asking for a truce. On the surface, the Sultan agreed. He acted as if his only focus was Egypt and the Fatimids. But in reality, both rulers were playing a dangerous game of strategy. Romanos thought this was the perfect chance. If Alp Arslan was busy in the south, then Byzantium could finally strike back in the east. So the emperor gathered one of the largest Byzantine armies in years. Soldiers came from every corner of the empire: Greeks, Armenians, mercenaries from Europe, even Pecheneg and Normans. With this mixed army, Romanos marched deep into Armenia, determined to take back the fortresses that had fallen into Turkish hands. It was a bold gamble, full of risk. Romanos hoped a quick campaign would restore Byzantine power in the east. But what he did not know was that Alp Arslan was already on the move. Their paths were about to cross, not in Egypt, but on the open plains of Manzikert. This gamble, this clash of two worlds, would decide the future of Anatolia. Why did the Byzantines and Seljuks fight at Manzikert? There were three big reasons. First reason, the Seljuks were raiding deep inside Byzantine lands in Anatolia. They were burning farms, attacking villages, and cutting supply routes. Emperor Romanos IV Diogenes wanted to stop this and show everyone that the empire was still strong. Second reason, Romanos himself. He became emperor in 1068 by marriage, not by royal blood. Many rich and powerful families, especially the Doukas family, did not respect him. Romanos believed that if he won a big victory against the Turks, he would earn respect and make his crown secure. Third reason, for Sultan Alp Arslan, the real enemy was not Byzantium but the Fatimids of Egypt. He actually wanted peace with the Byzantines. But when Romanos marched into Armenia in 1071 and attacked the cities of Manzikert and Alat, Alp Arslan had no choice but to respond. He had to protect his northern border. So, both leaders had different goals, but their paths crossed. And this crossing brought them face to face on the fields of Manzikert, a battle that would change history. When Emperor Romanos IV Diogenes prepared for the Great Campaign, he gathered a huge army of nearly 40,000 soldiers. But this army was not one solid force, it was a mixed collection of many different groups. There were about 10,000 professional Byzantine soldiers, trained and disciplined, coming from both the eastern and western provinces of the empire. With them marched Frankish and Norman knights, fierce warriors led by the famous commander Roussel de Balliol. Romanos also hired Turkic and Pecheneg horsemen, fast riders skilled in archery. From the Balkans came Bulgarian infantry, while Armenian and Georgian allies joined to defend their homelands. And at the emperor's side stood the elite Varangian Guard, tall, axe-wielding warriors, many of them Vikings and Anglo-Saxons, feared across the medieval world. On paper, this looked like a powerful army. But in reality, it was fragile. Not all soldiers were loyal to the emperor. Many were mercenaries who fought only for gold, and if they felt unpaid or unhappy, they could abandon him at any time. Others were supplied by local lords, whose loyalty was always uncertain. And most dangerously, one of Romanos' top commanders was Andronikos Doukas, the son of his greatest political enemy in Constantinople. This meant that even inside his own army, Romanos had men who were ready to betray him if the moment came. This mixture of strength and weakness would decide the fate of the empire at Manzikert. The year was 1071. In the bright spring sun, Emperor Romanos marched at the head of a grand Byzantine host, banners flying, armor shining. But behind the glitter lay trouble. His campaign moved slowly, chained down by an enormous baggage train, stuffed not just with weapons but with luxuries, tents, gold, silks, things an emperor thought he needed, but which only angered his soldiers. The army's discipline cracked. The Frankish mercenaries, always hungry for loot, turned their rage on the very towns they passed. Villages were plundered, civilians terrorized. Romanos could not tolerate this chaos. In anger, he dismissed them, losing some of his fiercest warriors before the real battle had even begun. By June, Romanos and his tired army finally reached Theodosiopolis, today's Erzurum. Here, the emperor faced an important choice. Some of his generals advised caution: let's stay here, fortify the city, and force the Seljuks to come to us. But Romanos was determined to show strength. He wanted a fast and bold victory that would prove his power. Ignoring the cautious advice, he decided to march further east. As the army marched through the forests of Knuz, soldiers cut fresh wood and sharpened new spears. Step by step, they pushed forward toward the shining waters of Lake Van. Romanos was confident. He believed the cities of Manzikert and Alat would fall quickly. In his mind, victory was certain, lost fortresses would be reclaimed, and his enemies would be scattered. But Romanos was terribly wrong. Sultan Alp Arslan was already on the move, leading 30,000 skilled horsemen from Aleppo and Mosul. His scouts watched every step of the Byzantine army, silent and unseen. Romanos believed he was the hunter, but in reality, he was the prey, walking straight into a trap that would soon decide the fate of empires. Romanos IV Diogenes was a soldier and a reformer. He knew the empire was weak, but he believed discipline, fair pay, and one bold campaign could restore its power. Romanos wanted action, and in 1071, he got it. On the other side was Alp Arslan. His name meant heroic lion. He was quick, clever, and a master of steppe warfare. He preferred fast strikes and surprise attacks over long sieges. That summer, he didn't plan a big clash with the Byzantines, but when Romanos marched into his lands, Alp Arslan had no choice but to face him. The two armies met near the town of Manzikert, close to Lake Van. The land was rough, with hills and open plains. It was perfect ground for horse archers, and it gave the Seljuks a big advantage. Romanos gathered one of the largest Byzantine armies in years. He had professional units from the east and west, the elite Varangian Guard, Armenian and Georgian allies, and many mercenaries, Normans, Franks, and Turkic tribes. We don't know the exact numbers, but it was a huge force, meant to show Byzantine strength. Alp Arslan's army was smaller but faster. His men were mostly mounted archers and light cavalry, trained in hit-and-run tactics and the deadly trick of pretending to flee, only to return and strike again. Here, speed mattered more than numbers, and the Seljuks had the edge. Before the battle even began, Romanos made a mistake. He split his army, sending part of it to attack a nearby town called Alat, while he moved toward Manzikert with the rest. That decision weakened the Byzantines at the very moment they needed to be strongest. On a hot afternoon at Manzikert, Emperor Romanos prepared his army. On the left, Nikephoros Bryennios led his men. On the right, Theodore Aliates. Romanos himself stood in the center. Behind them was the reserve, commanded by Andronikos Doukas, a man from a family that never trusted the emperor. It was a dangerous choice. Across the hills, Alp Arslan and his Seljuk army waited. They formed a wide crescent. Their horsemen moved quickly, riding in and out, shooting arrows, never standing still. This was their style of war: speed, tricks, and distance. By the afternoon, Romanos pushed his army forward. They even captured Alp Arslan's empty camp. But it was a false victory. The Byzantine army was now stretched too far, tired, and in danger. As evening came, Romanos ordered a retreat to camp. But in the confusion, the message was misunderstood. On the right, some troops panicked. In the rear, Andronikos Doukas abandoned his duty and marched away. Some say it was betrayal. Others say he thought the battle was lost. Whatever the reason, the result was the same: the line broke. The Seljuk crescent closed in like a trap. The Byzantine army collapsed. Soldiers scattered. Romanos himself was surrounded, wounded, and taken prisoner, the first Byzantine emperor in centuries to be captured alive. The captive emperor. When Romanos was brought to Alp Arslan, the Sultan at first could not believe this dirty, wounded man was the emperor of the Romans. But when he was told the truth, he placed his boot on Romanos' neck and made him kiss the ground, an old symbol of surrender. Then, to everyone's surprise, Alp Arslan showed mercy. He gave Romanos food at his table and offered peace. Cities like Antioch, Edessa, and Manzikert would be handed over. A ransom was agreed, 1.5 million gold coins at once, and a smaller yearly payment. To seal the deal, a marriage was planned between their families. After 1 week, Romanos was released with honor and escorted back to Constantinople. But his story did not end there. The Battle of Manzikert in 1071 is remembered as a turning point in world history. On the surface, the battle itself was not the massacre many later imagined. Most Byzantine soldiers survived, commanders like Bryennios and Doukas escaped, and the Seljuks did not even chase the fleeing army or occupy much land immediately. But the real tragedy came afterwards. In Constantinople, the powerful Doukas family staged a coup. Emperor Romanos was betrayed, captured, brutally blinded, and soon died in misery. This civil war tore Byzantium apart from within, and the Seljuks quickly realized the empire was weak. Over the next decades, Turkish tribes moved deeper into Anatolia. What began as raids slowly turned into permanent settlements, and the empire's Anatolian heartland slipped away. Manzikert was not an instant death blow, but it shattered Byzantine confidence, destroyed its unity, and opened the door for Turkish migration. For the Byzantines, it became a wound remembered for centuries, while for the Turks it became a triumph. Manzikert, the first great step toward a new homeland in Anatolia.